Ah. So Virgo, the truth does not arrive in comfortable packaging. It arrives in whatever form is available, in whatever moment the circumstances finally assemble themselves into a configuration that makes the remaining in the dark more untenable than the knowing. In whatever form, two people, each carrying something they have not yet offered you directly, finally exhaust their capacity to continue carrying it without it reaching you. Two truths are coming from two different directions, through two different channels, each one painful in its own particular way. Each one produced by a different situation and a different person and a different set of circumstances that have been developing toward this moment at their own separate paces. They arrive in the same window, and what the universe does in response to both of them landing is something I am going to tell you before we go anywhere else. It rewards you twice. I want to begin with what painful actually means here, because the word is in the title and it deserves its honest examination rather than being softened into something more comfortable before it has been fully named. Painful does not mean catastrophic. There is a specific distinction between pain that arrives and levels something and pain that arrives and clarifies something, between pain that takes something from you that you cannot recover and pain that removes something that was not serving you while feeling very much like a loss in the initial impact. What is coming is the second kind. I want to name that clearly before we go any further so that when the painful thing arrives, and it will arrive, you have a frame for it that allows you to be in the pain honestly without being consumed by it. That allows you to understand what is being taken away and what is being cleared and what the difference between those two things actually means for what comes next. The pain is real and it is not the end of the story. Let me describe the two people and the two things they are about to bring forward. The first, someone close to you. Close in the sense of having had significant access to your life and to your trust and to the version of yourself that only people who have earned proximity actually get to know. Someone whose presence in your world has been a constant in a way that has made their reliability feel like a given rather than something that required regular verification. What they are about to reveal, or what is about to be revealed about them, is going to challenge the constancy you assumed. Not necessarily through deliberate betrayal. The painful truth from the first person is not always the truth of someone who acted against you with malice. Sometimes it is the truth of a discrepancy, of a gap between how they have presented and what has actually been operating, of something they chose not to share, that once you know it, reorganizes how you understand a portion of your shared history. The revelation will hurt because it will require a revision, a rereading of certain things through a corrected lens that makes them look different from what you believed they were. The revision is not the same as loss, but it will feel like loss initially. The second person, the texture of this one is different. The second painful truth is coming from a direction that is less intimate but more directly consequential. From someone whose position in your life is specific to a particular territory, perhaps professional or financial or relational in a broader sense, and whose revelation has practical weight alongside its emotional weight. Something has been happening in this territory that you did not have full visibility into. Not because you were not paying attention, because the information was not available to you in the form that would have made it visible. It was in the channels you were not watching, in the conversations you were not party to, in the decisions being made without your full knowledge or participation, that have been affecting something that matters to you. You are about to know. And the knowing will initially feel disorienting in the specific way that understanding you have been operating with incomplete information always feels disorienting. There will be a moment of backtracking, of re-understanding things you thought you understood with the new information now present. That moment is uncomfortable. It is also clarifying. And I want to speak to something about the timing of both of these truths because they are not arriving simultaneously by accident. There is a coherence to what is coming. What I mean by coherence is that the two painful truths, which appear to be separate and are produced by entirely separate situations, are part of the same larger clearing. The same process of reality asserting itself over arrangements that were built on incomplete information or misaligned interests, or the specific human tendency to avoid difficult conversations until avoidance becomes more costly than honesty. Both of these truths were always going to surface. That is the nature of truths. They do not stay contained indefinitely. The energy required to maintain the arrangement that keeps them from being visible eventually depletes. The circumstances that allowed them to remain in their unexpressed form eventually shift into circumstances that make the unexpressed untenable. Both truths have reached that threshold simultaneously, not because someone coordinated them, because you have reached a point in your own development and your own clarity and your own relationship with reality where the universe has determined that you are ready to have a clearer picture of the specific dimensions of your life that these two truths involve. The simultaneous arrival is the universe saying you can handle both at once. And the simultaneous arrival is the universe saying you can handle both at once. And I want to add something to this because I think it is the piece of the reading that will be most useful to hold when the difficult moments arrive. When two truths surface in the same window, there is a temptation to treat them as a cumulative weight, as one thing plus another thing, producing twice the difficulty, as a double burden that requires twice the resources to process. The reality is different. Two truths that are part of the same clearing do not add to each other in a simple way. They illuminate each other. Each one provides context that makes the other more understandable. Each one clarifies something about the broader landscape of your life that allows the other to be seen more accurately. The picture that emerges from both simultaneously is not more confusing than either alone. It is more complete, and more complete is always ultimately more manageable than the incomplete version. Even when more complete is initially more painful, because you cannot navigate from an incomplete picture as effectively as you can navigate from a complete one. And every adjustment you have been making to compensate for the incomplete picture has been costing you something. Both truths arriving together means both compensations becoming unnecessary together. The energy release is not doubled. It is more than doubled. Because some of what you have been spending has been going into the maintenance of the gap between the two incomplete pictures, and the closing of that gap releases something that the separate closing of each one would not have produced. Let me speak to the rewards because the title names them and they deserve the same specificity as the painful things. The universe rewards you twice because two truths that clear the field produce two openings, not immediately, not in the same breath as the pain. There is a sequence that has to be honored, and the sequence is truth arrives, pain is felt, clarity is processed, the field is cleared, the opening becomes available. The first reward is connected to the first truth. What the revelation about the first person clarifies is a dimension of your relational landscape that you have been navigating with an inaccurate map, and inaccurate maps are costly, not because you are moving in the wrong direction, but because navigating with incorrect information requires continuous adjustment that the correct information would have made unnecessary. The energy that has been going into that adjustment becomes available when the adjustment is no longer required. That energy comes back, and it comes back in a form that is specifically useful for what is waiting for you in the space that the first person was occupying. The second reward is connected to the second truth. What the revelation in the practical territory clarifies is specifically what has been limiting your movement in that territory without you knowing it was limiting your movement. Once you know what was limiting it, you can address it. Once you can address it, the limitation dissolves, and the dissolution of a limitation you did not know was there produces exactly the quality of opening that the title promises. Twice? Tell me in the comments if you feel these approaching not the specific content, but the quality of something that has been building toward a reckoning in your life. The sense that certain conversations have been waiting, that certain situations have been developing toward a moment of truth that has not yet arrived. Tell me if this reading is finding the right place. I want to speak to how you receive the painful things when they arrive, because this is the piece that most directly affects whether the rewards follow on the timeline they are capable of following, or whether they are delayed by the way the pain is processed. Do not protect yourself from the information. That is the complete instruction. In the moment of each revelation, there will be an impulse to begin the protective organizing of the information before it has fully landed. To begin immediately building the framework that places the new information in the most manageable possible relationship to everything you already know. That smooths it, that reduces it. That makes it fit more comfortably than the full size of it actually fit. Resist that impulse. Not because the framework is not useful, it is. The framework will be necessary for the processing, but the framework, when it is applied before the full information has been received, sometimes prevents the full information from being received. Sometimes the protection that smooths the information on the way in also smooths away the parts that are the most important to have clearly. The most important parts are sometimes the most uncomfortable. Let them be uncomfortable. Let the full size of what is being revealed have room to be what it is before you begin the work of integrating it. The integration work is the next step. The full reception is the current one. I want to speak to what the clearing actually feels like once the immediate pain has moved through you, because there is a specific, distinctive quality to the period immediately after something difficult and clarifying arrives that I want to give you in advance so you recognize it when it comes. It feels like breathing more easily, not immediately after the revelation. In the days that follow, when the initial shock of the new information has settled enough that the practical processing of it has begun. When the revision work has produced a new picture that, while different from the old one, has the specific quality of being more accurate, accurate pictures are easier to navigate than inaccurate ones, even when the accurate picture is less comfortable than the inaccurate one was. There is a specific quality of exhaustion that comes from navigating on an inaccurate map for a long time, of making adjustments that would not have been necessary with correct information, of carrying in your interior a version of reality that has to be continuously maintained against the encroachment of the truth that does not quite match it. That exhaustion has a source. The source is about to be removed. And when it is removed, what arrives in place of the exhaustion is not immediately obvious as relief. It arrives more quietly than that, as a slight, gradually building quality of things being easier than they were, of a particular kind of effort no longer being required, of a specific tension that you had stopped noticing as tension simply not being present anymore. That is the clearing. And the opening that follows the clearing is what the reward is made of. That is the clearing. And the opening that follows the clearing is what the reward is made of. I want to describe the opening more specifically because opening is a large word and I want to give it practical content rather than leaving it abstract. In the relational dimension, the opening looks like the specific availability of your interior that was previously not fully available. The portion of your emotional and relational resources that was allocated to navigating a dynamic built on incomplete information is now free. It does not disappear, it redirects toward what is actually there and what is actually true and what actually deserves it. And what deserves it in the relational landscape that the first truth clarifies turns out to be something you will recognize immediately as more aligned with what you were actually looking for all along. Something that the incomplete picture was obscuring not just by taking up space, but by shaping your sense of what was available and what was possible. Once that shape changes, what becomes visible in the newly cleared space is different from what was visible before. The second opening is in the practical territory, where what the second truth reveals, while initially disorienting, ultimately removes the specific, unacknowledged friction that has been slowing movement in a direction you have been trying to move. Where understanding what was operating in the background, even if the understanding is initially uncomfortable, gives you the specific information required to address it directly. And addressing it directly produces the specific kind of progress that managing around it never quite produced. That is the reward in its practical form. Let me give you the full picture of how both painful truths and both rewards are connected to each other, because I think seeing the structure of it will help you move through the painful part with more understanding of what it is in service of. Two incomplete pictures have been shaping two areas of your life. In each area, decisions and orientations and the specific way you have been operating have been influenced by information that was not fully accurate, not through any fault of yours, simply through the nature of having limited visibility into the interiors of other people and the private operations of certain situations. Both incomplete pictures are about to become complete. The completion hurts because correcting an inaccurate picture involves the specific, uncomfortable process of releasing the inaccurate version and rebuilding with the accurate information, which is a form of loss even when what is being lost never quite corresponded to reality. But the complete pictures, once assembled, allow you to operate in both areas of your life with full information, and full information changes what is possible in both areas simultaneously. That is the twice of the twice. As we close, I want to say something to you that I think is the most important thing in this reading. You are not being punished. The two painful truths arriving in the same window is not the universe deciding that you deserve a difficult period. It is not a test designed to see whether you can absorb multiple difficult things at once. It is not the culmination of anything that was wrong with how you have been operating. It is the universe deciding that you are ready for the accurate version. Ready in the specific sense of having arrived at a sufficient level of internal solidity that you can receive truth that challenges your current picture without being destabilized by it, that you can process and integrate difficult information and emerge from it with a clearer orientation rather than a broken one. The simultaneous arrival of both truths is a statement of confidence that you can handle both at once, that the clearing can happen all at once, and that the rewards which follow the clearing can arrive in a concentrated form rather than trickling in separately over a longer period. The universe is not dragging this out for you. It is giving it to you in full all at once, because it has assessed that full and all at once is what you are capable of and what you deserve. The universe is not dragging this out for you. It is giving it to you in full all at once, because it has assessed that full and all at once is what you are capable of and what you deserve. Receive it that way, not braced against it, not with the protective mechanisms that make receiving difficult things survivable, but that also sometimes prevent the full information from landing cleanly, open, the way that someone opens when they trust that what is arriving, however uncomfortable in the initial impact, is ultimately in their service. It is, both of these things are painful and in your service simultaneously. That is what the title is describing. And the rewards, when they arrive, will confirm it.